Speedgoat's back, baby! Hey guys, my name's Colin, and this is my review of the Hoka Speedgoat 7 after 100 kilometers. Super happy to announce that I think the Speedgoat is officially back, but we'll get right into the review and we will start things off with the fit. So I went true to size. This is a size 10.5. All my Speedgoats have always been a size 10.5, and this one fits me perfect. I think a lot of people are recommending going a half a size up, and if you like a little more space in the toe box, I think that would be perfectly fine. But for me, this fit absolutely perfect. It does have your typical kind of narrower toe box up front, closer to the toes, so you are kind of pinching inwards, but the width around the ball of the foot feels really nice in the regular width size. And I find the length to be almost identical to all the previous Speedgoats that I've tried personally. I even tried on the Speedgoat 7 and my old pair of Speedgoat 4s, which I love, and I found they were pretty much identical in length. I think the Speedgoat 7 has a little more space in the ball of the foot, like I mentioned earlier, but aside from that, the fit felt identical. But it is, for me, a pretty one-to-one fit, meaning that when my heel is at the back of the shoe, that my toes are pretty close to the front. If you like that little extra space in your trail shoes, then maybe go half size up. But for me, true to size was great. I found the fit in the heel area felt really nice, and I used that extra lace loop here to lock my heel in a little bit tighter, and it just overall felt really good. Next up is some comparisons, because I think people are curious what this feels like compared to the 6 and the 5. Because even though the 5 didn't work for me, I know it's a lot of people's favorite Speedgoat, and I think trail running was really exploding in popularity when the Speedgoat 5 was available for purchase. I think a lot of new trail runners at the time just really loved that Speedgoat 5. So when it comes to comparing the 7 to the 5, I think the midsole is a little bit closer to the 5 than the 6. The 6 was very stiff and dense and didn't have much softness or bounce to it. I think the 7 might not be as squishy feeling as the 5 was. One part of the Speedgoat 5 that a lot of people love that I didn't actually love was the stretchy, kind of very pliable upper, and this upper is definitely not even close to being similar to that stretchy upper of the Speedgoat 5. The Speedgoat 7's upper is much closer to the Speedgoat 6 or the Speedgoat 4. A little more rigid and a little more containment in the forefoot. You don't really feel that stretch like you did in the Speedgoat 5. And when it comes to comparing this Speedgoat 7 to the Speedgoat 6, the midsole is just not even comparable. The midsole here feels much better. It just feels a little softer, it feels a little bouncier compared to that dead Speedgoat 6 midsole. Even the upper, I think, feels a lot better to me. Like, that Speedgoat 6 upper made my foot just throb. I could never get a good fit. There was a little bit of heel lift. I don't have that in the Speedgoat 7. So next up is the traction. So you have your typical kind of wicked Vibram mega grip traction here that all the Speedgoats have. You know, they've switched it around a bit and claimed that it's better, but to me it's like, how do you improve on one of the best grips, if not the best grip available in trail running? It's just gonna handle all kinds of conditions really, really well. I just always find the Speedgoat traction to be fantastic, and this one's no different. So next up is the cushion. So thank goodness they've improved the cushion here on the Speedgoat 7 compared to the Speedgoat 6. The Speedgoat 7 here has switched things up and they've gone to a super critical EVA. So it's still an EVA, but it's just far more comfortable. You get a little bit of squish, you get a little bounce back. It just overall feels like what you would want and expect from a Speedgoat. And so far after 100K, it just keeps feeling better. So far it doesn't feel like it's bottoming out at all, which is always a worry with like these EVAs, but perhaps the super critical will hold up a little bit longer. We do have a 5 mil drop, so I think it is around 38 millimeters in the heel and 32 millimeters in the forefoot. And I think it's weighing in around 10 ounces for a men's size 9. So next up is the upper. So the upper here feels like a pretty solid kind of textile mesh setup going on. You know, I've only been running here in Canada where it's absolutely freezing, so I'm not completely sure how it's gonna do in the heat, but time will tell with that as the weather gets warmer. It does look like there's some breathable areas here on the midfoot area. on both the medial and lateral sides, but the tight mesh here around the forefoot does look like it's a little less breathable comparatively. I wouldn't say there's like a super stout toe bumper, but it's a little more rigid up here for some protection. And you have that kind of Hoka stretchy vamp here as well. The tongue is definitely longer compared to the Speedgoat 6, but it does remain fairly thin. I saw some people were complaining about how thin the tongue was, but luckily I didn't have a major issue with that. The only time I really do feel pinching sometimes is if I lock down the top of the front of the ankle here just to lock in my heel. And that's kind of the only spot here where they added a little more padding. So it kind of worked out perfectly for me and the way I like to lace up my sneakers. But if you really like to crank down on these laces, then you might feel a little bit of the lace bite because of this super thin tongue. I did find it interesting here, they added an extra loop here in the forefoot. Like you usually only have one up here, but yeah, there's two. And you do have a gusseted tongue. I'll be interested to see how this forefoot area holds up as we get more and more miles into it, just because the little bit of pinching here that you can see, those kind of areas sometimes do break down a little prematurely. But so far I don't notice anything and they're holding up just fantastically. You do have a pull tab here, but I've never really understood these kind of pull tabs, like the ones up top here where you can actually pull down and use the leverage to kind of pull the heel open to get your foot in. Like those ones make sense to me, but this one is pretty much useless unless you're like hanging your shoe somewhere. Also a little gaiter attachment on this Speedgoat, which is kind of cool. I know a lot of people love to hike in the Speedgoat, and the Speedgoat also comes in a wide. So if you find the Speedgoat to be a little too narrow, you can get it in wide. But as you can tell, I'm just so hyped the Speedgoat is back. As long as it holds up durability wise, I think this will be like my main shoe. Been waiting for it to kind of come around. I was so disappointed in the 5 and the 6 because the Speedgoat 4 is just one of my favorite shoes ever. And if you were like me and you enjoyed that Speedgoat 3 and Speedgoat 4 and weren't big fans of the 5 and 6, then you're gonna love this one. It's very close to feeling very similarly to the Speedgoat 4, I think with an improved cushion setup. At the same time, this isn't like a crazy shoe or anything. Like all these new shoes coming out with super foams and plates and all this crazy new technology. The Speedgoat is just kind of more of a standard trail shoe. And honestly, the trail super shoes are, to me, a little bit overhyped. Like, I love just the traditional style trail runner when it comes to technical terrain. And where I live here in Canada, it's just primarily super technical stuff. So I'd much prefer a stable, well-cushioned, well-fitting shoe that you can bomb technical terrain over kind of a tippy, never know what you're gonna get, crazy plated super trail shoes. But yeah, so far I've noticed that there's some mixed reactions on the Speedgoat 7, whether people really like them or not. So I would love to hear what everyone thinks about the Speedgoat 7. Like, do you like it as much as I do? Or is it a little too narrow still? Or do you prefer like the crazy new foams and plates in the trail shoes? Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about the Speedgoat 7. We'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions about the Speedgoat 7, I'll try to answer them all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.